I was looking at some of these photos of Hendrix in concert, and the photographer said, I went to the concert, I had 24 exposures on my roll of film. That's it. Nowadays, you can shoot 1,000.
I know.
And you just go, oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
And I've 24 exposures.
It makes you really appreciate the art that comes out of that era. You know, like that they had to choose those images so selectively.
But also focus.
Okay. Oh.
You had to do focus and everything. It's crazy. Go ahead.
And we have to do focus here.
Focus.
So
Here we go.
Thank you all for joining us. I'm Benj. This is What Could Be Bad. I'm very excited to have the first episode of this new podcast start out in Van Nuys with Matt Wallace. In this studio, my band has some real history. We recorded a whole album called All Sides, one of my favorite OAR albums, which includes some killer tracks that Matt helped us bring to life that wouldn't be part of our live concert repertoire without this gentleman. And we have a real history. We've been able to stay in touch over the years, and I appreciate that Matt embraced my idea to have a podcast that focuses on mental health and wellness within the entertainment industry. The idea really is pretty simple, is that I want to have conversations about people's personal experiences and to learn from them personally and hopefully share that with others and inspire people to be more open about anything that they're going through as well. You know, learn some tips and tricks from human beings that have been through unique experiences that have shaped their lives. And for me, having gone through, physical health issues, they led to mental health trauma that I didn't recognize for a while. And when I finally did, it was already very impactful on my life. And I had to make some changes and adjust to that. And they were big life habits and some schedule changes, seeing someone to talk about things and, just managing these new things. So what I really want to, focus on is not necessarily the music and the things that we've had in common in the past, but talk about some things that we've had in common in the past that we haven't talked about. And I want to ask you about a lot of things, Matt, but if you could maybe share with everybody just kind of, what you do, who you are, family stuff, any of the sort of like, who's Matt Wallace, so they know, even though I've already told them you're a producer, there's a lot more to you as a human being than just that. So I think if you could maybe give a little background on you, that would be really cool.
Went to UC Berkeley to be an English teacher, but while going to school, I was also making records in my parents' garage. And so once I got out of college, I was like, well, I can starve being a teacher or starve being a record producer, and that's what I did. So I did that, and then moved to Los Angeles, thinking I'd be here for 2 years, and moved back to the Bay Area. 35 years later, I'm still here. Got married, had kids, and tried to work while doing all these kind of things. And that's kind of the bigger kind of bookends of the whole thing. And that's pretty much the general part of it.
Did you get married after you moved to LA?
Yeah.
Okay, so you met her here. Yeah, and was that early on in your time in the...
I'd just had some success. I produced the Replacements and then Faith No More's breakthrough record. That was like in the end of 88 into 89. Then I got married in 93. Had a son in 95 and a daughter in 97, and then just, try to keep working while being in the business. And this business is really, to be honest, is pretty brutal. Probably similar to being a touring musician where you're away from the family in a way. Like when you're a producer, you kind of roll in at 11 or noon, then you don't go home till midnight. So I had a lot of peers who did not see their families till Sundays.
That had a real effect on your family life?
Well, for me, I got to a point where I decided I had to be able to go home at night. That started even on pretty much right around the Maroon 5 record. I just decided, and a little before that actually, where I just decided I will do like a 10 to 8 kind of schedule. Then I need to go home because otherwise, it got to a point where I didn't know why I was working. Because if I can't be with my family, even though I'm earning a living to support them, it didn't make any sense. And I actually got to a point where I was going to quit because I think they're really terrible hours. I think 12, 14-hour days, 6 days a week is not a way to live a life.
No.
And so I got to a point where I just said, okay, I've got to find a way to work within it. And fortunately, I had peers after they saw me doing it, they started going, oh, we can do that too. And I just had it where I could go home. That's why I would work with an engineer and say, I'm going to go home for dinner. I'll come back later. Or we're at 8 o'clock. We're done. You guys can keep working, but I got to go tuck my kids in. Because otherwise, those are beautiful moments that I had because I could read to my kids at night and tuck them into bed. And that was, to me, it became essential.
I can appreciate that, being a new father, like imagining not having any of that is really difficult. Knowing what it's like when I don't have it and I'm on tour is already challenging enough personally.
Yes.
Was there like a specific moment in that when you decided to switch your schedule and to like something that triggered you to know it was healthier for you to spend more time with your family and change your work schedule?
I think it was just, there's a number of things. One, I just saw life going by, and it was great to make records, but those things aren't going to resonate as long for me as having a child and trying to help with them with their lives. I still invest myself into the records very much, 100%, but I also had to find a way to, like bands go, let's work 24 hours a day for 3 months. It's like, well, for you guys, that's great. But if I do that with your band and every band, I don't get to have a life. I don't get to see my family, or if I was, dating or wanted to see friends, I couldn't do any of that stuff. And I got to a point where I did not want to give up that part of my life. It was also made more complex because my son had special needs. And so then I had to, after the initial 6 months of me being in denial, I had to also go, okay, now I need to be a part of this. And so I had to dedicate
Denial about his special needs.
Yeah. My wife at the time, she was the one who said, we have to pursue this. And so I would do things where I would work till 11 o'clock or midnight. I'd get up at 6. I would drive into a special school in Santa Monica. I lived in the Hollywood Hills, drive back and then go to work. I used to sleep in the car. I would drive him out there and he'd be there for 3.5 hours. I would sleep in our little minivan and then come back and then go to work that day. So
that's love.
And so then I would take him to, he had these different therapies. He had speech therapy, he had occupational therapy. He had to learn how to be socialized, so there was social skills classes, and then he had OCD issues. So part of me knew I couldn't just have my wife at the time do all that stuff, and I wanted to participate. I didn't want her to carry that burden, and so I wanted to be a part of that because he's also my son, and that's just part of who I am and who I was at that time. So, what
kind of impact did you feel, making that change and being a more active participant in his well-being?
Yeah, for me, it was essential because I was getting to a point where I was thinking about I would do another career. If I couldn't spend time with my wife at the time. I couldn't spend time with my son or my daughter, and it just got to it really. I mean, this is going to sound like hyperbole, but it did feel a bit like a gilded cage. It's like great. I get to work with great artists, great bands. I'm making a good living at it. I had bought a house in the Hollywood Hills. All that stuff was great. But I remember having a vision before I even got married. I had this vision of being really wealthy, really successful in some mansion on the hill and sitting there by myself eating a meal. And
like being totally comfortable and not having to spend time.
Not being comfortable. Sitting down and going, well, this sucks because I have this nice house.
Okay, you're envisioning that's where you're ending up because you're spending too much time.
Too much time at work and not putting time into, do I want to get married? Do I want to have children? And I remember going, well, I have all this great stuff, all this material possession, sitting down by myself at this big long table, eating by myself going, that's not what I want.
The Bruce Wayne kind of situation
Very
where
much
you're in this big house by yourself and nobody loves you.
To me, there was no resonance. It didn't feed my soul. And to me, it felt empty. And so I didn't want to pursue that. So then I did want to get married. I did want to have children. That was really important to me.
Yeah. Feeding your soul is something, that term, feed your soul, is something one of my life mentors always says to me about finding passions. And this is actually one of the ways I'm finding I'm going to do that in my lifetime, is connecting with people and learning from them. So I'm glad you touched on that because I think it's essential that we do that. Now, what you were talking about before, like the industry pressure of, the expectations of artists and labels of pumping things out, that's what was driving you to, feel the need to stay here and work, right? So turning that off, did you find that the industry then turned the volume on Matt Wallace down, wanting to work with you or anything like that? Or was it just because there's less supply of Matt, the demand for Matt goes up? How did that play together as you made your shift into choosing to be more present for your family?
Right. Well, that's a good question. I mean, I didn't really feel too much pressure. I mean, every once in a while, bands would say things like, hey, how come you're leaving, at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night? So I did feel that. But the thing that I got to thinking about was that there are producers like Rick Rubin who show up like once every 2 weeks and produce records. And I knew that wasn't my style because I wanted to be in the trenches. I wanted to be I wanted to get dirty. I wanted to get in there and work on the song.
I remember you getting dirty.
And so the Rick Rubin thing, I kind of thought I could try that, and it just didn't fit for me.
Yeah.
So if Rick Rubin can do that, why can I not work, 8 or 10 hours a day instead of 12 or 14? And the thing of it is that I understand, like sometimes if the producer goes and they say, well, you can't do any more work. It's like, no, I said, no, we've got an engineer. The engineer's been here for the whole time. He knows what's happening. If you guys work for 2 hours without me, I trust that you're going to be doing good work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that gives you, the band, space to try some things. And that way we're still moving forward. They come back the next day. That sounds great. Let's change this. So to me, it's just a more humanist approach because otherwise it's really brutal.
Sounds like it affected your workflow in a positive way because it allowed you to, have the piece you needed at home, or maybe it wasn't as much piece as you would want. It sounds like it was very challenging. I'd like to talk about that too. Yeah. But as far as the work goes, it enabled you to set it up in a way that really changed your workflow in a positive way by, allowing you to really focus your time in here and work with an engineer who might then extrapolate on the ideas that you guys have all discovered all day long, get a few more recordings of those, which when you're making a record, tracking, I don't know if people out there recognize how involved tracking can be and how much time you're not, unless you record everybody at the same time and do a live track of the song, you are literally playing the song over and over, and there's usually multiple takes of each track. And 24 tracks at a minimum for most, songs you're going to work on. So that's a whole lot of time involved to make one song, let alone one album. And I mean, preferably you would be working on albums, not, so that's a whole lot of time that you have to put into being in the studio and working. So when you would do that and you would work those long hours before you made this shift, how would that affect you in your day-to-day life with your family? Would you feel that you had anxiety? Did this affect you in a way that, you had like any negative interactions because you were working so much and maybe not able to really be as present and even rested, because you were spending such long hours there and having such short, interactions at home? Did it hit that too? Yeah, I mean, it actually started earlier. In my 8-track days, I had a studio in Oakland, and I remember I was so driven to build my career as an engineer, producer, mixer. And I remember even back then, when I was in my 23, 24, 25 years old, where friends would go out and do stuff and go, hey, you want to come with us to do this or that? And I'd be like, I can't, I'm working on a record. And I remember they just eventually stopped calling because I was always going to say I'm working. And so I did for a time when I first moved to LA and started working. After I did the long hours, I got to a point where I realized that there was a lot of wasted time in making records. People show up at noon, and then they order lunch, and then you work, and then you eat dinner. Then usually anything recorded after dinner usually doesn't fly. Yeah, it doesn't fly. Yeah. And so I did for a number of years. I did have a situation where I had bands. I go, look, you're going to show up at 10 a.m. You're going to have breakfast in your stomach. Yeah. And we're going to work, and we're going to stop. We'll have a late lunch, but we're out of here at 8 o'clock at night. Yeah. Oh man, why? It's like, because I want to see my friends and family, and you guys want to do things too. And it's interesting, you can still make records like that. If you get in there and you just focus and work, it's not a problem. And you have to be ready. You have to be prepared. Yeah. And I think that's a thing where, that artist to artist is very difficult. And I mean, speaking to our experience when we were recording, I mean, there were songs that day to day, like a song like what was Vancouver Jam turned into This Town. Right. And it was something like we had to piece it together. You had to piece it together, really, and find these threads and Mark coming up with a new chorus. Right. I think a lot of it is like, it's just that focus and that time, but I think to your point, if you're exhausting yourself, it doesn't help. If you're working in a time where it's not a productive time of day for most artists, like that's not going to help the creative process. Yeah, it's true. And another thing that people don't realize that I think what happens with bands and artists, if you just work all the time and you don't have time off,
there's no time for your body to kind of just sit and take things in. And I think you get to a point in time where you don't even know what you're singing about anymore because you haven't even experienced any life to come back and go, hey, this is what happened to me. And just like farmers, they do this thing where they let the field lay fallow. You just let it sit for a minute and you let it rejuvenate, then you start farming it again. And I think that if you just keep on the treadmill, you run out of things to sing about because all you're doing is working. And you need to like live life, go have some failed relationships, do some successful things, have issues with your parents or your family or friends, and you come back and you can write about it. And I think that's really important to me. So
it seems like an unnatural thing to do in the way the world works right now.
Yes.
Is to just kind of like sit and be.
Yes.
It's almost like how people have to like learn how to meditate. It's something I've begun practicing since my health issues because I find that when I do give myself space to just breathe, I can almost feel myself recovering internally from stress, from anxiety, when I realize that everything's like my body knows what to do. It knows how to heal.
Yep.
It's just sometimes if you keep putting more stresses on top of it, you don't have any of that space, and that's when the growth happens, right? I think that's a big part of what I'm trying to define in this podcast is how people heal. I want to shed light on different methods of doing that. And I think we live in a time and in a culture that it's like you have to push.
Yes.
And sometimes the pushing actually like doesn't help. You need to be able to be comfortable with yourself and idle and, relaxed at times, even though we live in a world where you have to work hard. For most of us, you have to put the time in, you have to grind. That hustle is a part of American success, I think, for most people, unless you are born with millions of bucks in your pocket and can go do whatever. But that's not us, right? And I want to touch on that aspect of it because I think it's important as like a producer maintaining a long-term career. It's hard to picture that arc when you're young, I think, but like as you've grown through your professional career, do you find the ability to, I mean, obviously you've forced that change in a way because you knew you had to, but do you find the benefit like, we'll get into mental health in just a moment, but do you find like when you do that, there are immediate benefits, long-term benefits? Is it sort of one of those things that you see it later that it did some good for you? How is it internally when you take a moment to sort of unwind, whether it's outside the studio or even while you're in here? What effect is that having on you internally, let alone in productivity? Right.
I mean, I think generally there's a couple of issues. One is we live in the American society has the Protestant work ethic, and I think the unfortunate ancillary damage of that is that men in particular are not ever allowed to be weak or sit, listen, be quiet. And I think we're kind of pushed to keep being productive. And I think that for me, I could do that for a while and I feel like I'm powering through it. And I think that I feel that at the time, but there comes a point in time where either I just break down or I have to stop and go, wait a second, I'm just feeling like this is not working. And I think if I were in earlier years, if I were more in tune with my body, I would have been able to say, I gotta stop this. It got really bad for me. I think my kids were probably like 5 and 7. I was actually having horrible heart palpitations. I couldn't breathe. I just had so much stress trying to like support my family and keep working. Wow. And I went to the doctor and he's like, here's a prescription for Xanax or one of those things,
So he just said it was anxiety, basically.
Yeah. Dealing with. And I was like, well, and it's not my nature to take that. And it's nothing against it. Just for me, I didn't do it. So I actually got back into yoga and I actually got into martial arts, which I had no interest in. But I found out that I needed to find a way to have 1 hour vacations, mental vacations, like 3 times a week. I'd do yoga for 1 hour. I'd do martial arts for 1 or 2 hours. And I even got to the point where even doing those things, I have my phone nearby. Like when I was doing martial arts, I finally had to turn off because I was worried about my wife had health issues. My son had health issues. And so even then I finally had to say, okay, for 1 hour, I'm turning this thing up. And if something bad happens, I don't know what to say, but I had to just be able to.
You needed that time.
I needed it because I was not going to survive. I was there was no way I could have kept up that level of stress without something bad happening. And so I had to find a way to go, okay, I'm going to take this break. I'm going to go do this. I could be calm. And by doing martial arts, you had to focus on the forms. Same thing with yoga. You have to focus on what you're doing. And then after, you get on the phone. Okay. And also, I did the same thing with hiking, actually, after that.
I remember you got into hiking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would hike every morning. I would drop my kids off and I would hike for like an hour or so, brutal, like really aggressive hiking to get the endorphins going. And people would say like, why do you hike? I go, it's a hiking or heroin.
Yeah.
And it sounded like it was funny. I've never done heroin, but my life at certain times felt like if there was heroin on the table, I would have absolutely done it because of the stress was so palpable. I had to do something, and that's why at least I got into hiking.
So helping yourself equipped you to help your family better.
I had to.
Yeah, it was a must, a necessity for you to address your own physical activity, so you could get out of your own head a little bit and deal with that stuff.
Yeah, because my wife had health issues, and because my son had health issues, and because I was trying to be there for my daughter, because my wife wasn't able to participate as much, I was always on. And there was about 2.5, 3 years I was going like 5 hours of sleep a night. It was brutal because I would work till midnight, get up, get the kids up to school every day. And I got to a point where I had to say, in fact, a therapist told me, he goes, you're gonna have to save yourself first. And to me that was like, I can't do that. I got to take care of my family. He goes like, you got to save yourself first, because if you go down, that's it. You have to do this.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way too. Is basically pushing so much for someone else's betterment and ignoring my own issues. And when you do that, obviously we know the implosion can be unhealthy for yourself, but it also will affect them. Right.
Yes.
Like, so if you don't deal with your own issues, it's gonna spread out. To the people that are relying on you.
Yeah.
And for me, when that happened, it was brutal because I was pushing so hard for them. It was almost like this antithesis of everything I was pushing for. And then when the release and the submission to that I had these issues to deal with, and knowing how long the healing, I'm talking specifically in 2020 when I had, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, but it was basically like, now we know is long COVID as well. And so when these things were affecting me, and I finally submitted to the healing process of the autoimmune disease, which I didn't know about the COVID stuff at that point, it was signing up for a good year at least of laying in bed and resting and not trying to pick up my kid and put him to sleep. And we're talking about a 1 or 2 year old as he aged through that. And that was a lot to ask of my partner, which then affects me in a different way. And this is all,
absolutely,
how I developed a lot of anger issues and anxiety and depression and things that I didn't realize were going on, but just kind of crept into my house, And I think if you're not, it's almost like taking care of yourself ends up being some kind of a part-time job that you have to do in order to maintain your full-time job, is the way I kind of have begun to think about it. So I mean, to your point, I love that you started your days with those heavy hikes. I've started my days now with long walks, besides today, because I drove up to Los Angeles to hang out with you, which I'm very happy about. And it's one of those things, though, that I find the centering and the release of the endorphins and all the dopamine my body's getting, all that stuff carries through the day. And when I get back from that walk and I'm feeling somewhat physically spent, I almost have more energy, even though I'm tired. And all right, I'm going to make the kids lunch. I'm going to make my wife breakfast. I'm going to, put a pot of coffee on in case she wants one. Like, what does the kid want to eat for breakfast? How do I get him dressed? Is he like, what does he need? And then it stops being like anything about what I need, because I've given myself that little piece of the day that I need to really function.
I think, sorry to interrupt you, but I just had a thought. Part of the challenges in our society is that for people like you and I, if we're pushing really hard for other people, and this is really, it took me a long time to get my head around this, self-care can feel selfish.
Yes.
And it's not. And that's the thing, is it took me a long time to get past that. It's like, no, I need to take care of myself so I can ultimately take care of other people. And because if you look at life as a marathon, not a sprint, you need to really stop, nourish yourself, chill, then jump back in the game. So that's very tough. It's very tough to acknowledge that and then pursue it.
Yeah, and I think like the acknowledgement is really like just like, it's like the first half. You acknowledge it and then you have to maintain it. You have to keep doing it. You know, you have to like keep being good to yourself and keep reminding yourself that even though you're taking this time, it's helpful to others because then you're correct.
Yes.
You know, you're in a good space to help them by taking good care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Over time, do you find it like for you more or less challenging to continue that, to maintain that?
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question about how I approach long-term self-care, I think for the most part I've gotten really good at it. I know when I need to take a break. I do walk a lot and I do hike when I can. But I had something happen in December of this last year that I had pushed back feelings about stuff that happened 3 years prior.
Okay.
What happened is I had ended up having prostate cancer and had my prostate taken out, and there's all this stuff that happened. And at the time, I just kind of went along business as usual.
Yeah.
And even my girlfriend just seemed like, yeah, you seem to be fine. And I kept saying, it's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. And I think what happened is I kept pushing. And then when I was working on a project in Brooklyn in December, all of a sudden, because I had 3 weeks out there where I would work during the day and then I'd come to the studio, to my hotel at night and just sit there. And it finally, over a course of some days, I realized the impact that operation had on my body, the impact on my long-term health, even though it made me cancer-free, it wasn't without a cost. And it was really something to just all of a sudden be there and go, oh man, and all this stuff came in because I think I'd kind of pushed it aside, just try to power through it, be a guy like, no problem, man, I got this. And then it hit me, I was like, oh, fuck. There was a lot there that I didn't address.
I mean, compartmentalizing, mental trauma from things we deal with. It's something I did. Sorry if I'm hitting the mic, buddy. I think it's a natural thing to do, right? Because like we don't always want to go and face all of it at once. We want to try to address what we can address piece by piece, I think. Or at least that was my thing, so I just assumed the whole world works like that. No, kidding. That's why we're here to talk about it. But when you realize this stuff, you were alone? You had time to reflect?
Yeah, I had time to reflect. And I think part of my issues were I didn't want to be a burden to anybody. Because I tend to be the helper or the rescuer, the person that does all the work, you know. And I didn't want to be a burden, so I always downplayed it. I talked to family and friends like, oh, it's the best cancer. It's easy to get past. It's not a big deal.
The best cancer.
Yeah,
what
it was.
A term.
I said it was the best.
I mean, because it's got the survival rate, right? Yes.
But it still had a cost. And so for me, it just, finally, when I had time, I just was by myself in the hotel at night, and after watching TV for a while, just sitting, I started thinking, that was a big deal what happened to me, my body, that I didn't want or ask for.
Yeah.
It was essential to stay cancer-free, but it still had a lot on it. And so, it came back with a vengeance. And I was like,
And that was all up here that it came back, you're saying. It did but you're saying also the physical like issues from the surgery. Like it basically caused like whatever mental trauma in the time that it happened that you didn't deal with. And then when it came back up, is it emotions? Is it like responses to like physical stimulus? You know what I mean? Like how is that, like what did that manifest as?
Well, I had a good year after the surgery. A lot of parts of my body weren't working. And were not functional, and you don't know if things are going to ever work. And, there's stuff like that. And so that was no fun to go through that. And then I do think there was the big emotional component of just not addressing it. And I do think I compartmentalized. And I did try to make it not such a big deal. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal for me in my life. And my girlfriend just said, I just thought you were fine. She'd ask, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's fine. It wasn't real. It wasn't true.
So when you tell someone you're fine and you're not, right? Like we're not hiding it on purpose.
I didn't think I wasn't fine.
Right, like that's...
I thought I was fine.
Yeah.
until I finally had the moment. I go, oh, here we go. This is what's happening.
And you're saying December of 23.
23.
And so we're in January of or 22.
December of 22.
Okay, I was going to say, because that was only a month ago.
No, December of
Is it
22.
like, well, how are you doing now?
No, I feel good because I'm more in touch with it, and usually pretty much in touch with my feelings. But I think that was so big. And another thing that here's what the thing happened. I didn't realize how dangerous that was because I thought it wasn't a big deal. But once I went online and started following these prostate cancer groups, people were dying from it. Mm-hmm. Like there are people going, "We lost my brother today. Oh, my dad died," and I'm like,
yeah.
And then I realized that it meant a lot more than I would have allowed it to be.
Right, because it's a very heavy thing, and you're on the precipice of that.
Yeah, and I still have to be checked. I still have to be checked for PSA. Still have to be tested for it. I'm fine so far, but
Does that bring up a lot of what you like experience it like and like? Is that test every time a stress?
It's not a stress thing, but it reminds me of because I had a moment like in a movie because I went to my urologist and he's checking me. He goes, come to my office. I thought, I'll go talk to him in his office. Closes the door and he sits down at his desk.
Yeah.
And then he goes, you have cancer. I'm like, that's one of these moments you go, that happens in movies, happens to other people.
Yeah.
Not going to happen to me. And it's like, oh, and then I had to see what kind of approach I want to take to get rid of the cancer,
Did you do chemo or did you?
No, the options are surgery to remove it.
Yeah.
There's radiation.
Okay.
And then chemo happens if those things don't work. Then you start doing chemo.
Okay. Thank you for educating me.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And I should know that, but I do have some friends actually. One I lost already to prostate cancer who was a dear friend. I just was thinking about him this morning actually because Willie Nelson tickets went on sale and I saw Willie Nelson with him and his lovely wife and my wife and we had this phenomenal evening and anyway
he died from prostate
he
cancer.
passed away from that
man.
and I have another friend who's fighting it right now and having a very hard time so that affects a lot of men right? There's these hidden things that can happen in any moment in our lives that we don't think about that can just, completely derail our day to day. Do you feel like your routine now is like what it is in part to avoid further possible, dealings with cancer or of that coming back? Have like your I know your habits changed before you dealt with prostate cancer, but now that you've gone through that, have you almost like doubled down or tried to change even more to avoid any other disease or things?
There's not much I can do. They've removed the prostate, so that's not going to get cancer anymore. So that's gone.
Okay.
And so all I do is I just stay physically healthy. I mean, I've always been physically, whether it's mountain biking or hiking and things like that. And I've done grueling hikes, like just whether it's the Grand Canyon or Mount Whitney and things like that. Just to try to stay in shape as I get older. That's it. And now I walk every morning about 4.5 to 5 miles. And my girlfriend and I walked 1,250 miles last year in 2023.
What? That is a ton.
1,200. That's a lot
Is
of
that
miles.
like average out? I mean,
that's like
365 days a year. So
yeah, we walked like probably 5 days a week, 6 days a week. Initially, we were smattering. Then we were walking like 7 days a week, 7 days a week.
Where do you find yourself going? Do you try to get like out of the city and do like nature hikes, or
I like to do that. No, because we live in West Hollywood, so we just go to Beverly Hills. We just walk this. We have kind of this path.
You have a route, yeah.
But we just do. We do 5 miles, and it's just. It's important, one, just to stay physically moving.
Yes.
And also we get to connect for an hour and a half and talk, and that's really, really lovely. We get to resolve things and,
Is your relationship able to kind of be a source of somewhat of therapy?
This is a really healing relationship. And, having been married for like almost 28 years and, there were a lot of challenges in that. Just having a special needs child will definitely affect how strong a husband and wife relationship can be. Raising children, all that stuff can impact it. And so now I've got a great relationship. Part of it's because there's less stressors, but also I found out that if you find the right person and if you learn to argue or communicate in the right way, it's actually amazing. And the
Yeah.
thing that I learned is in the past, it was always like, it'd be two people going, you're at fault. No, it's your fault. It's your fault. Well, with my partner, she and I, there's an outside third entity that we both say that's the issue. So what that means is that we both kind of join forces to address that issue. Oh, our communication's bad. Let's work on our communication. It's not like you're a bad communicator.
Yeah.
It's like our communication isn't working. And then we go, oh, let's both aim at that. And I find that if you can argue effectively and communicate effectively, what happens is you get past the hard stuff, and then it's actually really nice. Like I don't like growth. I don't like going to therapy. I don't like having to put my time and energy into it. But I like the person I become after each time.
Yeah.
And when my partner and I would talk about certain things, we actually get closer.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and so for me now, if we're gonna have an argument, I want to get to the good stuff on the other side of the argument.
Right. That's the goal.
That's the goal. So it's like, okay, let's get in there. I don't like to have these heavy discussions. I don't want to talk about feelings. I hate that stuff. But I want to get to the good stuff on the other side. When we get a little closer, I'm a better version of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And you learn how to support what they're going for too in that process.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something I'm trying to work on through this too. Personally, is like, I know I need to be a better partner. I'm not the best listener. I'm trying to, be that for my wife, especially with her career.
Right.
She's got a lot of stress in that. And when she gets home, like, I need to be able to sometimes not even respond. I feel like that's like one of the harder things as a partner is like, sometimes your job is not to respond to things. Your job is to really just listen, and I think, like you, I'm kind of like, I'm a fixer.
Yes.
Like I want to try to help. I want to give my 2 cents too often.
Right.
And my wife's going to see this in whatever amount of time and be like, how come you don't act like that if you know it? Because I think we're just who we are, right? And it's like, it takes practice to adjust these big parts of ourselves that we're, ingrained with over these decades, right?
It's true.
And it's hard to. But I think the motivation of that, like you're saying, knowing that there's the other side, that there's that goal that you want to be the better version of yourself is a driving force. But like, what do you say to people who can't find that? You know what I mean? Who don't know what that goal is, that they don't have that better version of themselves yet, that they haven't seen that they're in, because part of this for me was that, I was in despair, and I didn't feel that there was that other side. And that's when depression kicks in and you're irrational,
Right.
What could you say about how to find that to someone, about what to do to go about that? Is it therapy? Is it meds? Is it like, is it a personal journey that there is no description? Like that's part of, what I don't necessarily expect you to directly be able to answer, Matt, but I also want to, through this whole podcast, I want to discover people's views of what could be good as much as what could be bad.
Right. Well, I have a couple of answers to some of the things you brought up. One of the things is going back to an earlier thing you were talking about, which is when you have a partner who is expressing something that they're having a challenge with. And you're right, as men, we're taught to be like fix things. And I think the thing that I've learned is the first thing that I'll say is, I'll listen. I'll say, do you want just a sympathetic ear to listen to you? Do you want feedback? Or do you want action?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, I'll say to my girlfriend, I'll say, tell me how I can best support you. Like when she's had really, really tough times, I go, I know you pretty well, but tell me, what do you need in this moment? Because sometimes she wants one thing. Sometimes I go, how can I best support you now?
That's a great question to ask.
Yeah, that's really, for me, the best way to do it. And then for me, when you talk about when you're having, despairing times, I think for me, hiking and walking has always been essential. One, because I'm actually moving my body, that helps me settle down. But I've read articles recently that when you're outdoors, your eyes move as you're walking, and there's something about that calms your body. I don't understand it. I can't tell you what it is, but there's something about just as you walk and you look. And I found that when I would hike, and even walking, I process things really well. I come up with all kinds of ideas. I'm always giving myself voice memos about cool ideas and things like that.
Yeah.
And so for me, doing that is really important. Moving my body. Some people, medication is essential.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been my story yet, might be one day, but I know family members and friends that medication has been essential
Yeah.
to keep going.
Yeah.
And therapy, I have to say, therapy has been incredible tool to, one, survive at times, and then to ultimately thrive.
Yeah.
And having somebody whose only interest is to help you, which is different than a friend talking to you, because friends are always going to have their own ideas, like they don't like your girlfriend or they don't like this or that. But a therapist is like, okay, look, here's what you're doing that's not working for you. Here's what you should think about trying.
Yeah.
And
it's a very objective exchange in that capacity.
Yeah.
For therapists and therapy, I mean, did you find the right person on the first try? Because I think a big part of therapy being effective and successful and helpful is like finding a person who, when you exchange with them, it's comfortable. You know, it's very like you feel a natural openness. And like I've had therapists like when I was too young to understand the benefits and was too rebellious to probably give a shit or give it a chance. You know, like I pushed it off. But in my adult life, now that I know it's helpful and I know I need it, when I connected with this person who I see regularly now, it was like, okay, like they get like, they get me, but they're also like here to just fully support and give me the kind of feedback that's helpful, not like, you know, tidbits and pulling from emotional experiences I've shared with this person. So for you, did you find that person right off the bat, or was it like a process to get there, or have you switched over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's rare that someone's going to find the right therapist the first time around, and I think you go to therapists over time, and as you go to different therapists, you start seeing which aspects of each therapist that you liked and that you thought were effective for you, and then ultimately each time you find a new therapist, you take that into consideration. And for me, also, it's the right therapist at the right time for your part of your journey in your life. Because I had a therapist that helped me. You know, I had not the most healthy marriage. And let's just say for argument's sake, it's 50-50, my ex-wife and myself. That therapist helped me get through that and understand that. And that was essential for me to be able to grow and to realize this isn't really healthy for both of us. It's time for me to move on. Subsequent to that, I have had, and she was essential to do that, but now I have a different therapist now because I'm dealing with people in my life that are in the narcissism spectrum. And my previous therapist didn't really understand that part of it. She didn't have a strength in that. This new therapist has lived it. She had a narcissistic parent. She studied this stuff. So now when I deal with her, she's like, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what you have to work on. Because there are people that I'm still very close to that have these traits that I have to be able to work with and live with.
Yeah, that speaks to me in like that people really need to make sure the therapist they have is right for their circumstance, for whatever they're going through, because it's possible that they're a great therapist and they've helped them before, but sometimes the needs change.
Yeah,
and it's important to make sure you're addressing, you know, what your needs are and not just seeing someone to just spit stuff out. It's like the response is key. The way that you process from what they give you is key. And that might not be as on point if it's, you know, like an unrelated, you know, I guess, experiential level. You know, that's a key part of the therapy success.
In fact, I had interviewed a couple of different therapists before I ended up with this therapist, and one was absolutely the wrong therapist. He did not get it at all. When I said, here's my situation, here's what's going on, this is why it's challenging, and the suggestions he made were the ones that are just not, no, that's not right. And because I had read a bunch about this stuff, and there's some therapists online who speak very eloquently about narcissistic traits, and this one therapist I was talking to just was like, no, that's not gonna, no, these aren't, and so I knew that was the wrong therapist. And his office even called like, hey, you gonna book a time? I said, no, I'm still looking for the right fit.
So how did you know the one that you landed on felt right or was right? Was it just a feeling, or was it their experience and what you wanted to talk about and like where you were at? Was it a combination?
It was a combination of those things, and I think all those things you take into account. And as you have your first couple of sessions, then you see if you can start building on it. Like, oh, my instinct was right. She understands this, and she understands my situation. And then, you know, to me, every early on therapy, the therapist is not guaranteed you're going to see them the next time because you're not sure yet. And after you kind of go a few times, you go, okay, yes, this person, I trust them. And that's the thing. It's really about trust that someone's going to kind of move you in the right direction, because you can have bad therapists too that can make things worse.
Yeah. I could picture that. Fortunately, I haven't, I think, gone through that, but I've heard stories of like judgy therapists is one way I've been told about it. Doesn't seem like the job description to me that someone would be in that vein, but I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, and early on, I had a therapist when I first came to LA. I was trying to really deal with, I kept kind of picking the wrong kind of women in my life, and I ended up with a therapist who subsequently I found out that he was actually working out his own issues with autonomy through me. And so he was giving me advice that honestly wasn't helpful to me, and it did not benefit me. And I think it was more about what he was going through. But I didn't know that at the time. I was, young. I was like 28 at the time. And
did you bill him later?
Yeah, I did. I did bail.
No. Did you bill him?
Yeah, I should have. I should have billed him. Yeah, there came a point in time where he said, I could have, I guess, at some point in time, sued or whatever, and I just moved on.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to, you just live and learn. And sometimes, I think the thing that's really frustrating as a human being is that sometimes you really are in, desperate situations, dire, and you feel despondent, and you really need help. And sometimes when you reach out, you hope that you're getting the right help, because sometimes, if you're drowning and you reach out and someone hands you an anchor, it's like, well, that's not going to help.
Yes.
And in finding that person when you really and also being a man where you don't want to say I need help.
Yeah.
And we're pretty much like, yeah, I'm fine, everything's cool, and you finally go, yes, I need help, and then you reach out and it's the wrong kind of help, and that's not good either.
That's not helpful, obviously, in so many ways, and that will then spiral out into your work, into your everything. Your family, your personal life, everything.
Yeah.
How much benefit do you think it spreads in your work to have gotten these things right? To like kind of learn the management, the management strategy,
right?
And like how to give yourself space. How to talk to someone now that is the right kind of person to talk to. Have you seen a true difference in sort of like your personal relationships, your work relationships? Has it been able to grow, and has it fostered a better, I guess, like well-being for you as a human? Like, is it really changed things for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not been like really noticeable. Like, I haven't had any like really moments where these big blips, but I think over time I've seen an improvement on and how I relate with artists. I think. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I think that's a good question. Yes, there was about a decade where I think I made really safe records. I think I always, got things under budget and on time, and I think that was really important to me. And I think once I got more of a sense of self, and I felt more comfortable with who I am, and I felt like I had something to really contribute, I did start to feel more relaxed and able to really pull things out of people. And in fact, one of the things I really noticed was I felt like on working on the OER record, All Sides, that was, to me, where I was on a real upswing, where I really was starting to get a sense of who I was as a person and what I could really bring to the table. And it really started to kind of coalesce and come into focus then. Like, okay, I started to trust myself. I started to strip away all the kind of neurotic thinking, all the not healthy thinking. That started to kind of peel away, and I became kind of more my authentic self in a way. Yeah. And I was just able to kind of go, no, I think we should try this or try that. And I think also you become less defensive as you get healthier. I think you can take input easier. Yeah. And you don't take it personally. Like when someone goes, hey, when you do that, it's kind of like annoying, like, oh, well, let me think about that. And I think once you peel that stuff away and all your hurt, and then you finally become a more human being, and you're able to really interact in a more genuine way. Yeah. And then all this like artifice and all this stuff that is more defensive stuff goes away, and now you can just be a human. And it's interesting that, when we're young, we're human, then we learn all these kind of weird neurotic things, and we learn ways to protect ourselves when we're being hurt as we're younger. And as you get older, you have to start peeling that stuff away that helped you when you were younger, but doesn't help you when you're older. There's things I did to survive my youth that didn't help me as I got into my 20s and 30s. I had to peel those away and go, okay, now that doesn't work anymore. And that's pretty common, I think, with a lot of people.
Yeah, as we find out who our authentic selves are, and we learn to let that be, and we're comfortable with it, and we're not trying to like step out of ourselves to be this thing we thought we wanted to be. Right. It really enhances the ability to do what we want and be who we are.
Yeah.
I found that when we worked together, you always had a vision. You know, you always had a clear direction. You know, and it wasn't always immediate. There was work involved. You know, there was like, I do remember, like we've talked about prior to meeting up for this recording, you know, that you would leave and almost like meditate on the moment of where the song was at, structure-wise and writing-wise, and try to envision where you wanted it to go. Do you think having sound mind, you know, and having a clear head enables just generally people to what's the best way to ask this? Like by having a clear mind, do you think that you're able to, you know, create your best work in that sense? Like, are you able to see where you want a piece of music to go? Whereas if your mind is crowded, if it's busy, you know, you have a blockage, you know, because there's too much noise. Do you find that it's more singularly able to focus, you know, which to me is also like an analogy for just, you know, doing well, but like, you know, being okay and having, you know, like, you know, good mental health. But like, is it essential to that? You know, do you think it's ingrained in getting there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's two answers. One is I think your youthful angst and all that energy is what propels you forward to even try things, like to join a band or to be a record producer. You just have this like angst and energy. You go, yeah, I'm going to do this. And you don't even think about, can you support yourself doing this? You just like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of energy is really important early on. But I think as you get older, I think that stripping away all the stuff that obscures your view is really essential because you're really kind of looking through filtered glasses. And when you take them off, you're like, oh, and you can do better work. You are more clear and focused. And to me, that was important for me to get to that place. It just took a while. That's unfortunate. Part of being a human being.
I mean, I think it's natural. I mean, how many of us are exactly who we want to be in our 20s or 30s?
Right.
You know, it takes some time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still figuring it out. You know, I'm still having issues getting there. And I still see the better self down the road than I am in this moment. And I'm trying to learn more healthy habits and ways of being and perspectives. And that's what this whole thing is to get there and to discover it. You know, I think life is ultimately a lot of adventure and discovery. You know, we're here to experience things and to, you know, lean on others to make sure we're, you know, like ourselves are understood through reflection, right? And to me, it's not only self-reflection, but it's the reflection of, you know, how someone will see you and express that back to you. And now that you're at this point where, you know, you've had a very successful career and you're not done. I know that you're doing amazing things with Atmos and, you know, mixing incredible records, but you're still producing, you're still alive and kicking and like working all over the country, you know, which I admire very much. And I hope I'm still doing it, you know, in a number of years as well. That's the goal. But like you staying healthy and you know, being like this obviously is keeping you going in this industry. But how is it now with all these years of better habits and living in this new light? How is it for your relationships with your family? I know now you have a healthy relationship, you know, with your girlfriend, with your children. Has it improved? You know, even I'm curious with your ex, have you guys become on better terms now that you've made big moves to not be a couple, but you're still obviously a part of each other's lives through your children and what you've shared in your lifetimes?
Yeah, I wish that things were better with my ex. There's a lot of issues there, so that's still been kind of challenging.
Yeah,
but my kids, absolutely. And one of the things that I've stumbled upon as a father, which is still a miracle to me, and that is whenever I would do something that wasn't my higher or better self, I would say to my kids, you know, I go, hey, I'm really sorry. I wasn't the best version. I wasn't the best dad I could be at that moment. And I'm sorry about that. And I'm going to try to do better tomorrow. And that's not, I don't know how I learned that, but to me it was important to own your shit.
Yes.
And I feel if my kids could see that the all-knowing parent could go, yeah, I really messed that up, you know. And you can own it, that's great.
Yeah.
Because then they can do that same thing too. And I know that I'm not infallible. I mean, I know that as a producer or as a parent or as a partner, I'm not infallible, and I'm open to like, oh, I need some course correction.
Yeah.
And so I did that with my kids. And I think back to your idea of the mirror is the most important thing that we as humans need, whether it's our romantic partner, whether it's our children, whether it's our friends, because you can live by yourself and you can be the biggest asshole. Doesn't matter because no one's going to tell you.
Yeah.
But when you have a partner and they go, you're
Being a dick.
you're being a dick.
Yeah.
And you go, and if the relationship's important,
Yes.
you'll listen. And go, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
How am I a dick? Oh, okay. All right. Let me think about that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the thing I've said with my kids and with my girlfriend. It's like, I hear what you're saying. Let me think about that and see if I can do it better. Let me see if I can do a better approach to that. And that to me is the only thing there is to do on this earth. And I've said this, people think I'm being facetious. The only thing to do on earth is to learn and to love. Everything else doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Cars, boats, money, houses, doesn't mean anything. But learning and loving is it. That is it.
Yeah.
And in fact, even when you get back to songs, all songs are in their lowest form, they're just entertainment. But their highest form, it is a message to the world, to people who've had hard times, how to get through it.
Sure.
It is a gift of love, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
The artist will go and look over the edge and go, ooh, and come back to the audience and the listener and go, well, here's what I found out, and this is what I learned in my life. And people have said many times, they hear themselves in the songs, they hear themselves and go, wow, that person got through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it.
I love that. And I mean, that is one of the things I've loved about supporting the messages that Mark sings about.
Yes.
Is because his stories are, about love and about inclusion and positivity and these very important human factors that tie us all together. And one thing he always says is that we need each other, and I think he's right in that. And that's part of why I think doing this with people I care about is really important.
So I was going to UC Berkeley, and I was studying being an English teacher, which was my first passion. But I'd been in bands since I was 13, and I had a little studio in my parents' garage, and I was always recording my bands. But I ended up having a couple of moments where I passed out in high school, then also in college. And I actually had so much, I kept passing out, ending up in these ambulance rides, and the doctors couldn't figure out what was happening. They were giving me this like anti-seizure medicine, and all this stuff was happening. And I actually dropped out of college because my health was so bad. And I just couldn't do anything. I was just, and they were trying, there's different diets and things like that. And so I somehow kind of figured out how to like get through it. I moved to LA, and I was like a A&R guy for Slash Records, and I would go to these shows to see bands. The problem was the murmur of the crowd was the same sound and frequency of how it would sound like when I came to after passing out, after fainting. And so I had to go to these shows. I was white knuckling through these shows, like watching this band, like, okay.
Wow.
Like, oh shit. I'd walk outside, breathe, deep breaths, would go back in and do this thing. And I found it was panic attacks, anxiety and panic attacks. But this was at a time they didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
And I was having just horrible panic attacks, just like I thought I was going to die. I was like,
Triggered by the frequency of the audience.
Well, later that's what's, but when I was younger, because I ended up fainting when I was like in high school. I passed out and I didn't come to till I was in the ambulance. My parents found me, I was unconscious, but it was just like horrible grinding anxiety and panic attacks, and nobody knew what they were. And I was going to school just I'd try to like hang in there just to get through school. And then over years, I learned how to deal with them. But I moved to LA, and I was having these things where it was still kind of happening. Then eventually, they kind of went by the wayside. I knew how to manage them, but oof.
So back then, I mean, there wasn't like any treatment for that kind of stuff at all. They didn't understand.
They didn't understand it because my dad would keep saying, "Just relax." It's like, oh. Dude, if I knew how to relax.
That makes you more stressed. It's like somebody telling you to relax.
Yeah,
I can't relax.
If I could relax, I would have. I would have done that. I would have hit relaxation way before this whole thing where I think I'm going to die, I'm passing out, ambulance rides. I mean, it just happened. I'd be out with friends and I just would start losing my shit. So, but that was like anxiety. And so, because I learned how to do that, this guy, Tim Pagnotta, who's also now a songwriter and was in this band Sugar Cult, I had told him this story. So when he was on tour, he used to call me from payphones. Oh my God, dude, I'm having a fucking panic attack. What do I do? Okay, well, here's what I did.
Yeah.
Try doing this, try breathing, try to focus on these other things. But it was just because of experience, like just your experience. You now can speak to people who are going through similar things that you had to go through.
Yeah,
Where you're
yeah.
just like, you're bed bound and you can't do anything and you feel like,
oh man, that shit was so scary for me.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you were also able to directly help someone else, because that's part of it too. Is after you go through that and you feel it, you're like, I don't want anybody to deal with that.
Dude.
Like that, not on your worst enemy do you want somebody to like really be in panic attack mode, because it is like you're outside your body watching this shell of yourself lose it.
Oh yeah.
And you're just like lost, and your feelings are like outside of yourself. Yeah. It's crazy.
Overriding everything. I used to get tunnel vision. It would just be like this. I could see like this, and it was so horrible.
I remember having these things at night when I couldn't sleep. A part of mine was like I went sleepless for almost like a week straight. And that obviously made it worse. I just couldn't fall asleep. Yes. But I remember walking around my house at night and trying not to make noise, but like talking to myself of like, okay, you're not going to make noise tonight. And I was like, okay, this is what like a person who's completely lost does, or so, like sadly, like someone who may not have a home would do. And like in the streets, you hear those people talking, and I was like, what's happening to me? Yeah. And it's interesting to imagine going through that in a time where there was no identification of what that was. So God bless that you got through, and
it was bad.
Yeah. I believe it. It's really not fun.
Yeah, you know how it is when you get sick and certain things are happening mentally and physically where you maybe you're not gonna die, but you're getting like, I'm getting in the neighborhood. It's starting to feel like
and like that would be easier is like another thought I would have. Like that it would be a lot easier to just be gone than to like have to solve this riddle, whatever this is. Yeah. Which is the last thing we want for anyone.
Right.
And that being said, I think it's also important to make sure everyone at home knows we are not mental health professionals. Right. We are simply commenting on our own experiences. And if you do need any help with anything you're going through, please consult an actual mental health professional. Yep. That is very important. We are not here as a solution. We are here as a reflection of our own experiences.
Yep, absolutely.
To go back to the mirror, the self-reflection thing isn't always easy. And to like, see yourself through other people's eyes is not always easy as well. What I think about with what you said is the modeling of being imperfect, right? Like we need to acknowledge that we're not perfect beings. We have our flaws. And when we have others that rely on us to set an example, it's really important to model that in some form, and being able to say, I fucked up, or I'm not the best version of myself today. Let me know how I can do better. And your question of how can I support you best? Yes. I think all of those things are very important. And, the idea of learning and loving, being like the primary, what do they call it in Star Trek? The primary directive or something like that. Yeah, exactly. Like they're out there to explore or whatever peacefully. Right. Like we're here to learn and love as the primary directive. I think that's very fitting. And to kind of sum up all of this and relate it to why I'm doing this, I told you on the phone about the title of What Could Be Bad, where that came from. In the moment that I heard those words from my grandmother, and her when she was in hospice, and it was the last thing she ever said to me, when I asked her how she was feeling, and she said, "What could be bad?" I think it's really precise that she was feeling love, but she was also teaching me, and I was learning in that moment. Right. So the to learn and love was the core of that exchange, and that was her last thing for me. Wow. And the primary directive, I think, of this podcast. So I'm really grateful, that we can have this this exchange, because I really feel it important to combat all the negativity out there, all the divisiveness that's in the world. We're going into an election year, and things are just going to get crazier. I think it's vital that we all listen to each other, and we all learn from each other, and we all love each other. And so your openness is, kicked off what I think will be a snowball, of learning and loving. And I'm grateful. It's so good to see you and to know you're doing well, and to be in this same house of music that I love and has been a big part of my life, and to be able to do this here is very big for me. So I appreciate it, and I know maybe we'll reconnect again and do a B-side of this.
That'd be good.
But I really think for my first experience doing this, when you asked me, so what are we doing? What is this? And I'm like, I don't know. We're gonna figure it out. I think we've figured it out. It's a conversation. It's really just about your experience and what I go through and have been through, and us learning from each other. I'm not only grateful that we could do this, but you're helping me define what I think in years from now will be a very big part of my life, because I can see this being something that I'm doing over and over, because it's fun to connect with people. It's good to connect with people, and that is the big thing, right? Is that reflection. So.
And I would say I'm honored that you invited me to do this. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I have to say that there's something that you bring to the table that's really essential, and that you have a very beautiful, disarming sense of there's strength and vulnerability, because you and I spoke on the phone, and you're willing to go there. And when you're willing to go there, everybody will go with you. Because if we walk around with all of our armor, no one's going to say anything. But when you go, I went through this struggle, this is really hard. What about you? That vulnerability, that's a strength, and that's beautiful, and I think it's essential, and I think what you're doing is essential. I honestly think this is the kind of thing that can help people want to keep living, if they can hear stories like this, and hear themselves and go, oh, well, they got through that. Well, then we can do that too,
I certainly hope so, and feel that it could. And I told my wife, I was like, if this helps one person, I
think it's already helped too.
Oh, well, that's cool. Thank you. And that's great. So I've already won.
You've already won.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm just super grateful to be here, feeling, all this with you. Thank you. Man. And let's keep in touch, and one of these days, let's make some music and go for a hike and all that good stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Sweet, man.
God bless.
You
Thank
too.
you for your time, Matt.
My pleasure. Thank you for making the long drive down here.
Oh, yeah.
You and Chris, man. That's a long drive.
Chris is the man.
I know.
Chris made this happen. Without him, it's just me and my iPhone.